The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. Community members are gathering downtown this afternoon to honor the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. The No More Stolen Sisters March begins at Diana Krall Plaza at 3:30. Starting in 1992, memorial marches have been held in communities across the country each year on February 14th. The event originated as a memorial march for Cheryl Anne Joe, a mother of 3 from Sechelt who was murdered that year in Vancouver. Leah Vaisanen is organizing the march today in Nanaimo. Monique May is organizing a march this Sunday in Victoria. She'll also be in attendance at the march this afternoon. I was able to speak with both of them about the march and addressing the wider issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people.
Aitsquale, Leah Vaisanen, Shuje, Gotsa Ata, Kliklikoi Nation, Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories, and Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6, Samoa, Florence Hardisty, Uje, Haitsapka Makthwait, Haitsapka Sanemok Mastimok, Itutumok Maticho. So hello everyone. My name is Leah Vaisanen. I am from Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories, and Edmonton, Alberta. I am of Dene and Vietnamese descent. I was raised by my late grandmother, Florence Hardisty, and I would like to acknowledge that I am here on the Sanemok territory of the Coast Salish peoples, where I'm able to live, be able to share knowledge, and to be able to be here today and share words of what we're here for today. So, Maticho.
Kwe, Nandaralusi, Monique May. Hello, my name is Monique May, and I am from Unamagi, Mi'kmaq, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. I am Mi'kmaq and Acadian on my mother's side, and on my father's side, I am Portuguese, English, Irish, and Mi'kmaq. I give my territorial acknowledgement as an uninvited guest on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Esquimals, and the Sanghees nations. I am a committee member and chair of Stolen Sisters, 2S 231 in Victoria, and I am an advocate for gender-based violence.
Leah, Monique, thank you both very much for being here. Could we start maybe with the reason why we're here, the significance of February the 14th?
Yes, for sure. So every year, February 14th, it is the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, Two-Spirit Individuals Memorial Awareness March that happens across Canada. It's a day to gather in solidarity and commemorate the missing women and girls who are not brought home, that has not received justice, and who have not been getting any attention from our nation. And so it's a day it's pretty much a day to come together as a community to march for our women. This march is about remembrance, resistance, and accountability. We are standing in solidarity with families and survivors who deserve the action and justice. This march originally started in 1992 in Vancouver, downtown East Side, where a Indigenous woman, Cheryl Anne Joe, was murdered. So after the march started, and it just kept growing and growing, and here we are today.
And there's going to be a march here in Nanaimo, downtown, February the 14th in the afternoon. Can you tell me what's going to happen?
Yes, absolutely. So I am the Indigenous Students Representative at Vancouver Island University Students Union. I would like to first shout out to them for being such a huge support for this day and supporting me. So I'm able to put this march on. So yes, February 14th, Nanaimo will be having the march that I'll be organizing. This is the second year that I've hosted, and organized. And yes, so for the day, we'll be gathering at Diana Krall Plaza. We'll gather once we're ready to go. We'll be marching along the downtown core and then be ending at the pavilion at Matthew Sutton Park, where we'll be sharing stories, words. There'll be jingle dancer. There'll be a drumming circle. There'll be prayer. And yeah, it's just a time for us to, come together as a community and really bring more awareness to what is happening in our nation.
What would you suggest to someone who hears about this march and they say, this is a cause I want to support, but I'm not sure how, I don't want to do the wrong thing? What would you suggest is like a good way to be in that space and to show support? For sure.
I feel like just plain and simple, just show up. You be an ally. Don't be afraid to support our Indigenous women and girls. And yeah, just pretty straightforward. Just show up and, make sure you educate yourself as well. Yeah, just come and support us and, get into this cause because it is a very vital issue that's happening right now.
And could you give me a sense of the impact of this issue locally here on Vancouver Island? What do people need to know about the situation?
I feel as as time goes by, there are quite a number of missing in our, across the island of women and girls. And I feel like there's not enough justice being done. There's not enough attention being brought to this. And I feel like, everyone just has to do better in Vancouver Island has a high rate of missing women and girls, and it just feels like nothing's being done. So I feel like it's an issue that everyone should wake up and, just really be more on it and bring more awareness to it.
And Monique, you're going to be coming up, I understand, from Victoria for the march tomorrow. Could you give me a sense of how you think we could bring attention to this issue beyond, this day once every year, how to keep that momentum going?
Well, we do emphasize the 231 calls for justice to all Canadians. And I'm just going to read one of those calls, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, so just before you do the calls for justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, is there any context do you think people need to know about those?
Absolutely. The 231 calls for justice were compiled by a national inquiry. And when I say a national inquiry, you might all want to look at it as an international inquiry, because for Indigenous people, we believe there is no border. We have the medicine line. And for this inquiry, it was primarily done north of the borderline, which is considered Canada, but also south into the United States, because we do share that medicine line and we go back and forth. And it is an emergency as far as genocide of missing women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA plus people. This inquiry was compiled over a couple of years. In 2019, it was presented to our federal government, as well as to provincial and municipal governments and partners. The federal government was the key stakeholder and is the key stakeholder, but their lack of action is appalling. We are in 2025 and only 2 of those calls have been fully implemented. Some of them have been looked at and they're in progress, but the longer they take, more and more people go missing and end up murdered. It is important to note that we as Indigenous people and allies can't sit around and wait for our federal government and our provincial government to take the lead on this. We must come together in circle, in community, and help facilitate and implement this, not just to keep our Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA plus people safe, but for all members of our communities. David Eby in January declared that gender-based violence is an epidemic here in Canada, especially here in BC. We need action, not just words.
Now, you talked there about the need for, not just to leave this to governments. We've seen the time has passed and we've seen maybe the rate of progress on this. What are some of the things you think people who are outside of government can do to create some of the change you're calling for?
First and foremost, they must recognize that this problem exists. Then they must take the actions to decolonize themselves and listen to the voices of Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA plus people. And they must join us in the circle. We can't do this alone.
Monique mentioned there a phrase, decolonize, decolonize yourself. For either of you, what could that look like in practice? What are some actions or concrete steps people could take to do that?
There are so many steps that people can do to decolonize themselves. First step is showing up and being present.
Listening.
And taking meaningful part in our events, in our conversations. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. There are so many resources available for people to decolonize themselves. And truly, it's up to all Canadians to take those actions.
There's so many things that Canadians can do. But yes, going back from what Monique is saying, ask the questions. Yes, you come to these marches and events, and then after the day is done, then what? What are people doing right? Like after these events and marches are being held, I feel like more needs, they just have to keep going and educate themselves. As Monique was saying, that there's so many resources nowadays, to learn, to read, to listen. And, I feel like people just need to continue to show up other than just showing up when needed.
We've talked a little bit about the 231 calls to justice. Are there any in particular that you think it's especially important that we highlight today that the people know about?
Not to put you on the spot, but if you don't mind, one of the biggest ones that I see that we need cooperation with is with the media and social influencers. Call 6.1. We call upon all media and news corporations and outlets, in particularly government-funded corporations and outlets, media unions, associations, and guilds, academic institutions teaching journalism or medium courses, governments that fund such corporations, outlets, and academic institutions, and journalists, reporters, bloggers, film producers, writers, musicians, and more generally, people working in the entertainment industry to take decolonizing approaches to their work and publications in order to educate all Canadians about Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA plus people. More specifically, these include the following: ensuring authentic and appropriate representation of Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA plus people, inclusive of diverse Indigenous cultural backgrounds in order to address negative and discriminatory stereotypes. For me, it really rings home because, unfortunately, we are always portrayed as a sensational story. Media focus, and I know that there's a balance because you have to report the facts. They talk about the tragedy, but they are not good at reporting on who that person was. That person was loved, they were worthy, and they have a story. As well, we see this culture of perpetuating Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA plus people as a sexual fantasy. And we see the results of that as more and more go missing.
And then when it comes to the media drawing attention to a cause like this and pushing for change, how do we ensure that when we're reporting on this significant issue that hasn't received perhaps enough attention or certainly enough action, how do we make sure we're doing that in a way as the media that doesn't make it so that the only time Indigenous women are in the headlines, it is with this particular issue without necessarily, as you say, like highlighting the other dimensions of people's lives?
By being present more than just once a year, doing those human interest stories, showing what's happening in the Indigenous community, show us as the advocates and the self-determined people that we are.
I feel like, yes, exactly. Like we're all on the same playing field as the next person. And yet we are not highlighted as much as say just the next person beside us. We have degrees, we have education, we are successful. And I feel like the media needs to highlight this instead of, putting us on the media for one segment and then it's a negative segment and then that's all we get shown as. Highlight the work that the communities are doing. I feel like that's very important moving forward with the media, is to be present.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada and generous listeners like you. With your support, we can expand Midcoast Morning from 2 to 3 original programs per week to cover local news, current affairs, and arts and culture.
Leah Vaisanen and Monique May are both going to be in attendance at the No More Stolen Sisters March in downtown Nanaimo this afternoon. Starting at 3:30 at Diana Krall Plaza, the march is intended to honor the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. Vaisanen and May join me to speak about the march and to bring attention to the wider issue. We've talked already about how maybe the line between, we can't just necessarily wait for government to address this issue. People outside of government need to take action. That being said, what are some of the specific things you think it's most urgent for government to take action on?
I feel like for the government, I feel like Monique is probably can say the same thing. Like they have to do better. The responsibility to act does not just fall on Indigenous communities and nations alone. Like the federal, provincial, and municipal governments must take real steps towards implementing all these calls, as well as the lack of adequate funding, the delays in policy implementation, and the failure to listen to our voices. If this doesn't happen now, it's going to continue putting more lives at risk. And we need to see the concrete action in police accountability as well, safe housing, mental health and trauma supports, and justice system reforms.
We need wraparound services.
Could you explain a little bit, go into detail about when you say wraparound services, what those could look like?
We need services starting in mental health. We all know generational trauma is real and it exists. And for many people, they are only the first or second generation that has not attended a residential school. So it starts with our mental health. We then have an issue with our child welfare system. And that is acting like residential schools right now. We have so many of our children and our youth go missing while in care. And many of them fall victim to sex trafficking. Why is that happening? The government knows it's happening, but what are they doing about it?
I feel like they keep throwing money at the table, but where is this funding going? We don't have any designation of where all these funds are going. So I feel like as well, in addition to that, what Monique is saying, we need more resources. We need Indigenous-led resources that is open to all Indigenous individuals, because I see around Canada, there's, especially on the islands, it's lackless everywhere. And I feel like we need these resources to help our children so they don't go missing, and help in general for Indigenous individuals so they know that there is a place for them to go to receive assistance.
My background is crisis intervention. And I have been very fortunate to work within the military community and military family resource. And they do a wonderful job at wraparound services in resource centers. We do not have those resource centers for Indigenous people where they can come to one location and have mental health, to have access to somebody to help with their housing, to help with child welfare, to be a liaison when somebody goes missing with the police.
On that front, beyond like additional resources, are there any issues just with the way systems are set up right now, such that things are slipping through the cracks or things aren't working the way they're supposed to, and it's not for just a lack of resources?
I feel like, there is some action being done right now. For example, the red dress alert system that's being implemented in Manitoba by Leah Vaisanen. I feel that is a pivotal point right now and where we're at, to get, be, implemented and hopefully get this across Canada, because we need this alert system for our Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit individuals. Because if we can implement this across the country, we can probably save more. We can save more lives across the board. Cause we do see the alerts with non-Indigenous individuals, and those go out in 2 seconds. And I feel like we need this for our peoples as well, to save more lives. And up in BC on the Highway of Tears, recently in December, Rogers put more cellular towers up there, but there still needs to be more across that highway. So yes, I feel, yes, there's things being done, but at a slow pace. But I feel with these couple of movements that it can really help right now, but there's still more needs to be done.
I think, just to play off what Leah has said and to reiterate it, we do need an alert system. But one of the biggest cracks that I see is with law enforcement. When an Indigenous person goes in to report somebody missing, most times they are dismissed. We are told that we are of high risk before they even know the background of that individual. And in a missing persons cases, every second counts.
Leah, I'm wondering if you might be able to tell me, so it's one thing to be going to the march on Friday. It's another thing to be organizing and putting that all on your shoulders. Can you tell me how you got into that organizing side of things?
Yes, for sure. So for myself personally, in the last, let's say 5 years, I've been really wanting to be a part of this issue and advocate and get justice and make a change in this issue. So, as well, personally, I have been abused, and assaulted previously in my life. But I feel like I can use my voice today, because some women cannot use their voices and are silenced. So I hoped to portray my voice into something big to really get my voice across. So I've organized the marches. I've organized the Sisters in Spirit vigils that happen in October. And I feel by doing these marches, it just brings me joy. It brings me hope to get this message across. I feel that this year's march is going to be a bigger turnout than last year's, because I feel like a lot of people are more engaged in our community right now, and they want to come stand with us and walk with us. It's just something that, in my heart that I needed to do, and just to get this message across, in our city. So yeah, I'm so blessed and grateful that I'm able to, plan these events and, marches in Nanaimo.
And I know that a significant part of the event this afternoon, Friday afternoon, is going to be people sharing a lot more maybe personal stories. Today we've been talking a lot about kind of this as a significant overarching issue, and at the march I know there are going to be people sharing personal stories and connections to this.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like that's when when we're together like this and we gather, it's a safe space. I feel most safe when I share my story, when I'm with the women that are surrounded by me in my life. And I feel so comfortable to share my story, as well with the other women that are coming and attending the march and speaking. I just feel so safe and, empowered, and just being in a circle with these women. It's a feeling that I can't express. It just brings me so much warmth and comfort. And we're really here for each other when it comes to these to sharing our stories, to being part of the change and taking action into this issue.
Is there anything else, either Leah, Monique, you feel like it's important to highlight ahead of the event, ahead of the day, or moving forward into the rest of the year?
I would like to remind everyone that this is a memorial. We don't allow signs of protest at our marches. I want to remind people to walk with us, to surround us, and then afterwards to make a pledge to continue to walk with us and to do the work to decolonize themselves, and to end gender-based violence.
Leah, Monique, thank you so much for taking the time.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Leah Vaisanen and Monique May are both organizing marches on Vancouver Island this weekend to honor the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. They'll both be in Nanaimo this afternoon at Krall Plaza at 3:30, as well as at an event Sunday in Victoria. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew, our technical advisor. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. Get in touch at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.